By the way, if the webcam microphone up close, webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
See, but I have the files. You know, I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, you know, days and the fondle slap of choice, I don't know when that was, it doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as it's real. It's hard to get real information. Because seriously, they don't want you to have these two sources whenever I try to prove out. You know, it's not. If you expect your government to tell you the truth, you're going to sadly disappoint another one of these things.
Dear Lord, what a dirty old man, huh?
Really? Can't be serious. Is this really how you want things to be? Come on. More hooker, eruptions. Eruptions, whatever.
Like Dave Powers kind of...
Really?
Allegedly broadcast live from Pima Region 2, within the borders of the formerly united and currently occupied states of America. We bring you the Ochelli Effect.
I damn sure know I'm an original. We have all these situations. I'd love to know why it takes 50 years, for a 19-year-old girl to eventually get up to gumption to put these things out.
And that is that. I am live on UCY.TV radio. It is Saturday night, the Ochelli Effect. I am your host, Chuck Ochelli. Oh boy, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate everybody who does that, especially those that actually go to the website at ucy.tv/TOE. Really appreciate it. And of course, everybody who happens to use the TuneIn apps or whatever else that it is you decide to use to catch this or catch it further downstream, any which way you want, whether you go to the SoundCloud, which not too many people do, and look up Chuck Ochelli, you find a lot of these shows posted sometime later and all that kind of good stuff. But if you go to the ucy.tv/TOE page, there are at least 10 shows there archived, and you can catch up on all the stuff that's been going on, whether it's good, bad, ugly, indifferent, whatever. So, tonight, a different sort of show. Usually I'm the guy who talks about history. I'm the guy who talks about, conspiracy. I'm the guy who screams and yells about the current events. I'm the guy who does all that kind of fun stuff. And, well, sometimes we have to take a look at other things. And for me, one of the issues that is often not covered very effectively, I would say, in the alternative media is women's health. Now, why do I care about this? It's kind of funny because, after all, I am a male, I'm a guy, I'm not exactly the person that usually does this kind of thing and all that. But here's the deal, folks. If we don't pay attention, to issues like this, and we don't get at the truth, the actual reality behind what's going on, we find ourselves quite lost, especially because, in my opinion, of course, this is all my opinion, and not too much of tonight's show is going to revolve around that, because truth be known here, a lot of times when I discuss topics, I've got a handle on them. But here's the reality. When it comes to women's health, I know something about the mechanics, but when it comes down to their actual neurological makeup, their actual chemical makeup, I'm very, very lost. It is one of those things that I just, honestly, I have to throw up my hands about, because most of what we've been taught in the, let's just say, the conventional wisdom category throughout our lives, especially males, but I don't know, maybe it's not especially males, maybe women too, but I think all of us, in fact, have been extremely misled and misguided regarding what it was we believed about what is required for someone to be balanced when they're a female, required for someone to be healthy, just as a female in general, because again, these things are very misunderstood. They're very powerful chemical, biological, neurological things that are complex and extremely outside of our own experiences, especially as men. So, it is for that reason that that I have welcomed Leslie Carol Botha, who is just an incredible lady, an incredible educator, and just full of wisdom regarding this exact topic. So I'm going to get myself educated tonight, and hopefully all of you out there. I mean, maybe I'm just playing catch-up, and I'm just one of those lost, ignorant souls out there. I'm not sure, but I have a feeling that there's more than one of me. So, Leslie, how are you this evening?
I'm good. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on your show tonight. And I have to say, no, you're not out there in the dark. You are out there in the dark, and it's more than you. And really, the crux of women's health has never been brought into the educational system, period. And right. That is because, and that's why women are struggling, but it's also why men are struggling and our children are struggling. It is a domino effect. There is a great proverb, and let me see if I can pull it up here for you really quick. And it's a Native American proverb, a Cheyenne proverb, actually, from a book called Walking in the Sacred Manor from 1980. And the quote is, "A nation is not defeated until the hearts of its women are on the ground." Mm. And we are getting pretty darn close to that. And
I believe we're back. Okay.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm sorry. I was just laughing with you and saying, what, did I get knocked off the internet after 2 sentences?
It may be, and I swear I did nothing to it. It just started to break up, and then we were suddenly just gone. So, apologies to the listeners again. I know that everybody must have heard you get to the proverb there, the Cheyenne proverb. You had talked about women's hearts being on the ground, and the next thing we knew, Skype interference. So sorry about that.
Finish that statement again. It's a proverb, a Cheyenne proverb from a book called Walking in the Sacred Manor, 1980. A nation is not defeated until the hearts of its women are on the ground. And a revolution is going on in women's bodies, and nobody is even watching. In fact, nobody is watching what is going on with the state of women in the world. And these are the things. I know we've got 2 hours. I'd love to hear from your listeners. Let's really bust this thing wide open. But I really want to make people aware of the travesty that is going on with 51% of the population. Right. And we're all suffering because of it, environmentally, emotionally, physically. We can't get away from it. I have been so outraged in this last political election, a midterm election, for God's sake, and where women's bodies were played across the media. Right to abortion, right to birth control. Who the hell has the right to even make war on women's bodies?
Well, there's not only that, but this is actually got a very long context. This is actually nothing new, and I was really impressed recently listening to you because nobody brings this up. There were certain pivotal events. Let's just say in the history of the political and social mobility in women's history. There was a couple of pivotal events, and a lot of people point to the fact that birth control became available on a mass scale at one point, and this changed the game regarding exactly how interactive women could be in the workforce, politically, et cetera, right? But they do forget that there was something else that happened much earlier, which had already begun to change the game in a significant way. And I mean, I'm aware of this to some degree because it falls right in line with some of the things that I've studied regarding like Susan B. Anthony, women's suffrage, things like this. Even on my first broadcast when I came on this network, the first words out of my mouth practically were Happy Susan B. Anthony Day, everybody. You know, but you know, I'd love for you to address that because I know what types of thoughts you have, and I think people don't even consider that at this point because of the sort of state of modern convenience the way it is regarding certain sanitary products, et cetera, they sort of forget that there was a time when that was an issue in and of itself too, right?
Well, you know, and it goes farther than that, Chuck, because it is all about women's history. We've got a great sense of men's history. It's all written down in the books, and we memorize it, and it makes no sense to us because 50% of the history is missing. And women have made great contributions along the timeline ever since the beginning of time, and yet it's ignored. And when you have 50% of the population who doesn't understand their history, that doesn't understand the values, that doesn't understand the impact of what women have done, the contributions women have made to the world, you keep them victimized. And then you don't share information with them about their fundamental health. And it's not reproductive health. Reproductive health is about sex. Reproductive health is about, well, it's about sex, birth control, and STDs, and that's what you get in school, and everyone cringes and groans, and that's about the end of that. But reproductive health is just a small piece of what goes on with women. It's our menstrual health. It's our endocrine health. It's our hormone health. It's menstrual health education. That's not what is being taught. So going back to history, women have been demonized ever since the time of Aristotle for our uterus and hysteria, and the word hysterectomy comes from hysteria, and the fact that we give birth. That is the most sacred, fundamental act on this planet. That is what keeps this planet alive. And yet, the women, and I've been around the block quite a few times by now, Chuck, but and growing up with this whole advent of the birth control, and I'll get back to that, you know, we've been told to deny and suppress our menstrual cycle. And they've done it very effectively, and we have bought into it. And you deny that essential element in yourself, which has been tied back to moon, menses, magic, mathematics, and all of that is my book, Understanding Your Mind, Mood, and Hormone Cycle. You can find that at holyhormones.com. You take away the sacredness of that, and you have vilified women. In fact, Germaine Greer has a great quote that you need to understand about women being vilified, demonized. It is her body is the last chance for liberation, and yet at every turn of the way, it is women's bodies that are either being cut up or drugged. And these are serious issues. How the heck can men and women even have a chance at a decent relationship when women don't know what's going on with themselves, and men are looking at them, observing. In fact, men often have a better idea what's going on with the women in their lives than women do, and everybody is reacting to hormone changes and hormone shifts.
And it's not just the educational system and the social stigmas and et cetera that are out there, in the general public. I mean, the medical, society as it stands is also extremely bizarre regarding this issue. They seek to drug and defer and absolutely marginalize all of this stuff. All of these very natural processes, which are part of not only...
let me just... go ahead.
Go ahead.
There's... a great example of that right now. And the FDA is hearing arguments about the first pill for a very common form of lack of libido in women. And some women have been crying because there's Viagra for men and a host of other pills and whatever, for sexual enhancement for men. Why? Well, would have. And maybe some of our listeners want to chime in on that one. But there is a pill that's being discussed in front of the FDA to enhance women's sexual libido. I mean, really? So it goes deeper than that, because this pill turns out to be an antidepressant that has failed 3 times in front of the FDA. And now, because of all the marketing involved, and well, not even the marketing, we haven't even gotten that far yet, but because of all the research, the clinical trials, and all the money that's gone into it, they're trying to repackage this antidepressant and put it out there as a pill for sexual dysfunction.
Well,
what are we coming to? A pill popping society?
Well, absolutely, and everything gets repurposed too. Don't forget. I mean, stuff that was made for blood pressure ends up being your hair growth pill, right? Other things that were meant to increase blood flow in people who had blocked arteries. Well, that's actually your earlier male enhancement pills. I'm not sure what they use now, to be honest with you, because I'm not keeping track of it. But I've seen the repurposing of drugs over and over again. Your antidepressants were marketed as, stop smoking remedies, et cetera, right? So that this stuff is par for the course in a way, but it gets even more bizarre, in my opinion, when it comes to a woman's health issue, because there is a profound lack of understanding among medical professionals regarding what is the actual natural order, the natural power that is self-evident in the female person.
All right.
I know I'm struggling to put this
I love
right
you.
way,
I love you, and I'm gonna wrap it up for you.
Cool.
I mean, I know we have 2 hours.
Yeah,
What you just said. This is great. This is one of my favorite quotes. Or passage from a book, and the book is called The Politics of Women's Spirituality. I'm actually holding this book in 2 hands because the binding broke today, because I've used it so much. And this is a passage called From Sacred Blood to the Curse and Beyond by Judy Grahn, one of my mentors. And I have been involved in this issue since the early 1980s. Judy Grahn, because a group of people once gave me 2 apple trees for my yard, I arrived at my own definition of the difference between power and control. This happened to me as a result of understanding the nature of apples, how they come about. An apple is something real which is created. This is power. Only an apple tree can make an apple. No one else can. The wealthiest man on earth cannot make an apple, no matter how he might stand in the sun or squat or contort his flesh. He does not have the power of an apple tree to make apples, and neither does anyone else. He can own them. He can fence them, transport them, plant and prune them. He can bulldoze them, line them up in military formation, poison them, grind them up, bore them to death, set fire to them, graft them, and use them. And this is control. He can never, from the substance of his body, make an apple as an apple tree can. And this is power. This is power. Women have held this nonviolent, non-controlling, to some extent, power for millennia. And because of this, we have been suppressed. In fact, I do have this quote now, Germaine Greer from The Whole Woman, 1999. Quote, "A woman's body is the battlefield where she fights for liberation. It is through her body that oppression works, reifying her, sexualizing her, victimizing her, disabling her." That is the revolution that is going on in women's bodies, and no one is watching, and yet we're all suffering.
Here's the thing, strategic standpoint,
Gotcha.
even if it doesn't, from a strategic standpoint, even if one doesn't want to accept that that there is a sort of war on women, what better methodology could one use than to sort of distort and further oppress the actual feminine characteristic, which is essential not just in the creation of life, but in the creation of balancing the character of our species in general. This is a perfect way to do it. I mean, look, if you control the mothers, let's just say, then you'll control the babies. You know what I mean? Which means you have a hold on that generation before it even knows that it's alive. You know what I'm saying? This is definitely part of a sound strategy. And this has been part of a sound strategy for a long time. You don't have to look very far. You can just take examples from any text you want regarding religion, government, anywhere. Women are marginalized for a reason. They're kept out of positions of power for a reason. It is because, realistically, as you so perfectly stated, the actual truth about the power over life on this planet when it comes to the human species resides with the female. And I don't know why that's not understood. I said in a post earlier today, I said, look, if I pretend to understand the really true nature of the woman, the woman half of my species, then I should sooner tell you that I'm shooting pool with the Easter Bunny every Saturday, because I don't understand it. It has become extremely distorted regarding what's supposed to be conventional wisdom. Premenstrual syndrome and stuff like postpartum psychosis and postpartum depression. These are trigger elements. These are things that I'm supposed to watch out for, not to understand or to know how to deal with in any way, shape, or form, or not to correct, because they can't be corrected. They're simply chaotic aberrations that are visited upon me as far as what I'm supposed to understand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're good. I don't even know where I want to go with all of this. I mean, you just covered so many topics so fast, but this is not just about women, Chuck. This is not just about women. This is about men. Yeah, and I'm tired. I am tired of men not being part of this conversation. Because if y'all kept your pants zipped up, we wouldn't be having the problem we'd be having. It's about respect. And men have not been taught, to a great extent, have not been taught to respect the women in their lives. Women have been medicalized, objectified, sexualized in the media, in school, in the workplace, sexual harassment. For eons, women have been raped. They have been victimized. In fact, the startling statistics are that 1 in 3 women around the world has been raped and abused. 1 in 3 women. I was sitting in circle with women at my home we have a red tent a circle at my house on the new moon every month. And there are 5 of us. 3 out of 5. Victims of incest and rape. Some multiple rapes. Multiple incest. Horrible stories. And I live in a pretty cool town in Colorado. This is not in the South, and this is not in other places where you might kind of expect these things, and that we even expect them is unacceptable. And it's just shattering. And I have this saying, and I'll share it with you now. If it happens to one woman, it happens to all of us.
Mm.
And in the past 40 years, Chuck, more women have disappeared off the face of this planet than in all the wars and the Holocaust combined. Disappeared.
I was not aware of that.
There is a movie, a documentary called It's a Girl, the 3 most dirtiest words in the world. And the stats are just unbelievable. And I'm going to go through some of the forms of violence against women, which include, but are not limited to, female infanticide or infant homicide. And it is the intentional killing of infants. Neonaticide, killing within 24 hours of a child's birth, is most commonly done by the mother, whereas infanticide of a child more than 1 day old is slightly more likely to be committed by the father. Dowry death, the deaths of young women in primarily India who are murdered or driven to suicide by continuous harassment and torture by husbands and in-laws in an effort to extort and increase dowry. Dowry death is considered one of the many categories of violence against women in India, alongside bride burning and acid throwing. Female feticide, sex-selective abortion, the act of aborting a fetus because it is female. There are more females aborted in China than are born in the U.S. every year. Illegally pregnant, having a second child, mostly in China, who will then be considered a bastard and a ward of the state. The pregnant mother also becomes victimized, abused, and harassed. Forced abortion, forced sterilization. The perpetrator, in this case the Chinese government's one-child policy, causes abortion by force, threat, or coercion, or by taking advantage of women's incapability to give her consent. This may also include the instances when the conduct was neither justified by medical or hospital treatment, like forced sterilization. Forced abortion may include a physical invasion of female reproductive organs. And by the way, forced abortion was denounced as a crime against humanity at the Nuremberg trials. As a result of China's one-child policy, approximately 30 million more men than women will reach adulthood and enter China's mating market by 2020. And it gets worse because of this. Because of the uneven ratio of men to women in China, one would think that women would become more valued and China's abortion policy would be reversed. However, infant girls are kidnapped. They're being kidnapped from families and sold into other families to be groomed as wives for the sons. So girls and boys are growing up and developing together and then married. And then we have the abandonment of elderly women, deserting a dependent person with the intent to abandon them or leave them unattended at a place for such a time as may be likely to endanger their health or welfare. And of course, we know sex trafficking, and maybe we're not aware of sex trafficking. But you all better become aware of sex trafficking, because if you all got daughters, I'll give you an example. If you all got daughters, if a girl disappears in L.A. and she's not found in 72 hours, chances are she's on a plane out of the country, never to be seen again, sold for $500,000.
Right.
Facebook is a front for pimps and perpetrators who are trying to lure your teenage daughter into a mall or some place where she cannot get help. And they're using 16, 18-year-old boys, whatever her age is, to act as the front. And then the pimp grabs her. These are horrible times. Not only for women, for young girls, for your daughters. And you better wake up and be aware. Any time you see on the news another girl has disappeared, and there have been plenty of them. There was just in Philadelphia. A woman a nurse was grabbed off the street in 30 seconds and thrown in a car. And luckily, the guy kept using her ATM card, and they finally caught up with him in Maryland. This happens every single day in this country.
And it is often underreported and underdiscussed, I would say, the sex trafficking aspect of this, because I think it is just one of those like too insane to believe kind of stories among the general populace, because they just don't they think of it as the plot of a movie as opposed to the reality. But the fact is there are international rings of smugglers just for this type of traffic all over the world.
It's a $30 billion industry.
Right.
So when there are organizations out there saying stop sex trafficking, no, it ain't going to happen. It is filled with mobs and drugs and God knows what else. I have this video on my site about men cheering on dancing half-naked women in Amsterdam in the red light district, and they're watching these women doing these erotic dances in these windows, and then at the end of the video, they're directed to look up, and this big neon sign comes up about how these women have been trafficked to be here. They've been kidnapped and trafficked. And the women were actors, but all the men were cheering and hooting. And you do that, you're contributing to the problem. You look at porn, you're contributing to the problem. So men, you better get involved, because this could happen to your wife and your child. And this has to be tackled on both ends. No, we're not going to stop sex trafficking. What we're going to do is empower women so they know how to say no and mean no, so they don't feel vulnerable. They don't go into places that are unsafe for them because of some guy.
Well, that is one of the things too that they say that you can't involve yourself in victim shaming, but it's not victim shaming to teach somebody to be defensive, to be aware of their surroundings, to be aware of their situation, to be at all times prepared for an escape. I mean, look. Let's get down to a couple of other things here. A lot of these abuses that you're talking about, in reality, these are not usually even stranger abuses of any kind. These are usually familiar type abuses, people that are related to them, people that are their neighbors, their family. This is not something that just occurs when you happen to venture out into the world either, right?
Well, and that is very true, and it's gone on for hundreds of years. So, I mean, we can't stop the problem unless men get involved. And so how do ideally, we'd have to have a whole new education system that is empowering to women, that includes women's history, and for boys as well. I taught for many years at an at-risk treatment program for girls who had been in jail, 13 to 17-year-old girls already in jail. And and it was, well, I'll go into the rest later, but I also ended up teaching the boys. And when I walked into the boys' room, and they were 13, 17-year-old, quote-unquote, juvies, and I said to them, I got information that'll make you the best friend, lover, partner a woman ever had. Are you interested? These kids were dying for information. I whipped out my hormone cycle chart. I whipped out all my birth control methods and said, well, this is how a woman can, trick you into getting her pregnant. I flipped it all around for them. And it was the best information they ever had. And they had so many questions. I let them know why their mother was so loving and giving 2 or 3 weeks out of the month, and then a royal bitch on the 4th week out of the month. And when they ran out of the house and ran away, same goes for girls, and in fact, with the girls, this is really sad, Chuck. And I'm really jumping ahead here, and we'll go into, I think, the second hour, and we'll get into more of the endocrine system and its functioning and things that we can do and understand some of these syndromes that attach to women. But 90% of the girls, 13 to 17-year-old girls that I taught in 4 homes, 90% of them ended up in jail and had their periods. Hello? Really? And this is because of what happens in the last phase before a woman has her period, when her hormone levels drop, her immunity decreases, becomes more compromised, and she just feels overloaded and tired and fatigued and doesn't know what the heck is going on. And not many people know that alcohol and drugs, legal and illegal drugs, are much more potent right before a woman's period at any time than any other time of the month. In fact, I took my class to the detention center here in the county, and I sat in front of five women in orange who hung out in the bars, the blue-collar bars, downtown. 5 women. I said, alcohol over here, 5 or 6 drinks, you're fine. Alcohol over here, 5 or 6 drinks, you're shit-faced. I hope I can say that. And and because of the hormone changes and because of the shift, and 5 out of 5 women said to me, well, no wonder we end up in jail every month and have our periods. They're being thrown in jail for disorderly conduct and disruptive behavior because of a lack of education. And these are the things that really spurred me on to write my book. In fact, the book, and I mentioned it already, and you promoted it in Bless Your Heart, Understanding Your Mind, Mood, and Hormone Cycle. I just have another chapter in a new book that's out this year, Teenage Girls, The Guide for Health, Wellness, and Self-Esteem. You can find that on Amazon. It's not on my website yet. In understanding truly what goes on with teenage girls or women's hormone health. This is the crucial piece of information that keeps women victimized by their bodies and keeps men confused.
Well, and this is the thing, because it seems as though, all right, this is going to sound really ignorant, but I'm going to have to say it anyway. Look, I'll draw this all back to my own roots, okay? My mother was one of these people who was chaotic. I mean, she just was. I used to very much joke that she had exactly the reverse menstrual cycle, because about 3 days or 5 days out of the month she was kind of nice to me. But other than that, she was absolutely inconsolable at everything, constantly reaching out for all sorts of drug fixes, unstable, abusive relationships, continuously. And I have spent most of my life, honestly, Leslie, thinking to myself that she was just a wicked human being that happened to spawn me. Okay? The more that I've started to, and I've only just begun to scratch the surface of the stuff that you talk about, okay, regarding these issues, because to be honest with you, I always felt that it was just one of those things that you just had to deal with. It was the chaos of women. They're beautiful, they're wonderful, they're powerful, but they're scary as hell because I can't figure out what's coming next, and they don't make any sense to me. I mean, I literally even told my son, who's going to turn 12 in a few days, I have literally sat there and told him, when he's asked me questions about how to interact with the opposite sex, that I can only tell you this: I know virtually nothing. Women are crazy, and you have to basically select which kind of crazy you want to deal with, and remember that you will never understand them. That is the only thing that I could impart to him of any sort of wisdom regarding this. Okay? But again, as I've started to open my eyes to a lot of other things, this is one of those things that is not being discussed even among the alternative streams of media. It may be touched upon once in a while. You may find a certain sort of witchy websites and things that will discuss, lunar cycles and the menstrual cycle and things like that. But they never discuss the real down-to-earth results of what is going on. And I think that new cycles are created out of sort of aberrant cycles. And this sounds confusing, right? I mean, am I making any sense to you so far?
Yeah, you stopped me right when you told him that women were crazy. I haven't wrapped my head around that one yet.
I'm sorry. This is the way that I he wanted to know, how do you understand them? How do you interact with them? How do you keep the peace with them? He was asking these questions out of frustration. And I said to him, the truth is, I don't know. And all I can tell you is, that's about it. They're never going to make sense to you, sir.
There was this kind of joke, this book around that was being passed around, this whatever it was, a graphic or whatever, what men know about women or something along that line, and you open the book and the pages were blank. And yeah, I'm still haven't gotten past the part of crazy for a 12-year-old who is going to be entering the world of hormonal young girls, to be looking at them as crazy. When can I fly out to your house and have a consultation with him and give him good information? I mean, serious.
No, I'm very serious. This is the only thing that I could relate to.
Well, it's not good. However,
right.
It is the male experience.
But that's the thing, is that from my experience, this was the only thing I could tell him. I'm trying to learn at this point in time, and I have a handle on some of this stuff. I mean, I even told you, off the air, that I have a handle on the mix of a lot of things. I have the desire to put things into some sort of synchronous relationship regarding my role and the roles of any females in my life. But I am at a loss for how things actually function. You see?
As women are. And so where does that leave us? Dependent on the medical and the pharmaceutical industry to fix what's wrong with us.
Which are terribly misguided, and I've gotten that far.
And dangerous.
Absolutely
dangerous. Absolutely. So let me start, and we're going to recreate the paradigm. All right?
Okay.
And the paradigm is that in the beginning, there was the goddess, and she created all things living on earth in her image, according to her cyclic universal laws. And on the seventh day she rested. Actually, remember this, all right? Because 7 times 4, if you're doing 1 day a month, 7 times 4 is actually her premenstrual phase. The 7th day she rested, her bleeding time. Eve was not the seductress. She did not seduce Adam with her body and the apple. Eve was the original human, and from her body all life was conceived. Adam was her consort, partner, lover, but it was from Eve's body that humankind evolved. Now, if our spiritual writings were written in that tone, we would understand and respect women. We would understand and respect women. Now, the other paradigm that we need to change is that we're not Homo sapiens, excuse me, we're not Homo sapiens. We are homoluminescent beings. And science has now taken us down this path, neuroscience in particular. We are not, well, let me rephrase that. We are the reflection of our biochemical status, our electric magnetic frequency. That is who we are. The day of the ego is dead. Ego is now called a sociopath. The day of the ego is dead. And science is showing us that our biochemical makeup defines our personality. Whether that's a serial killer or whether, and we can get into that, and I'd love to get into that, and I'll get into that with any one of your listeners, a serial killer, a rapist, a humanitarian. It all depends on our biochemical nature. Now, for example, Robert Whitaker, who I've interviewed a couple of different times on my radio shows, which are now on the Liberty Beacon Project, and you have a show there as well, Chuck, wrote a book called Anatomy of an Epidemic, The Rise of Mental Illness in America. It's a much longer title than that, and I've kind of, shortened it for this. An excellent read. I never got through the book. I mean, and I have to interview him again. I will be interviewing again. But the thing that stopped me dead in my tracks was his statement that the first people who took psychotropics in the 40s and the 50s, and these were legal drugs, forever, and it was 1 in 3 in Americans at that time, by the way, 1 in 3, forever changed the neural pathways of their lineage. Now you think about that, and then you start adding other toxins in our environment. There are 256 mercury hotspots in the United States. We've got chemtrails. We've got Monsanto's Roundup and glyphosate. We've got vaccines, mercury and aluminum, both known as neurotoxins. We've got more psychotropic drugs, and who is even possibly thinking straight? And we haven't even added in alcohol and illegal drugs to the mix, right? Who is even thinking straight? Then you add in steroid synthetic hormones for women, and then you add in, Prozac and everything else. I think I'm just getting lost in my own thoughts. But who is even thinking straight? Who even knows what it's like to even think, to feel, to be, to understand, to perceive, to be part of?
Well, right, but here's the thing though. This all sounds really terrible. It sounds as though forever we have been sort of altered. There is a great deal of wreckage when it comes to the self-awareness of women. Of course, men, as we have stated here, are completely lost on this issue, and I've admitted it and revealed it quite well here. Okay, and I'm not someone who is beyond consideration. I'm not someone who is without empathy, without sensitivity. It's just that I have to admit I am at a total loss for understanding. I cannot even come up with a logical solution regarding these behaviors and things. And part of the damage has been done by psychiatry, in my opinion, but also psychopharmacology has been a detrimental disease pretty much to womankind for certain since its inception, in my opinion. Now, that might be a little bit of a harsh statement, but I find it true.
Nope, it's good. It's really, really good. I mean, you go back to Aristotle and thinking about the uterus and women and women being a product of their uterus. I mean, that has set the stage for how many centuries now? And in fact, before women, in the 18th century, I guess, 18th and 19th century, women were viewed as the property of their husbands, and husbands were locking women up in mental institutions for PMS and PMDD, which we now know as premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is classified as a mental illness, and also postpartum depression. It was women who made up these loony bins, and husbands had the right to lock them up and keep the key. And there are plenty of stories about that. You start diving into the history of women and addiction, women and mental illness, women's history of women's birth control, and I've told you this before, Chuck. I've got all of this in a PowerPoint presentation, and I give my slides, and it gets pretty ugly. And what it is, it's you got men controlling women, and because of the dysfunction that brings, you got women controlling men because of their lack of education and knowledge about their body, and men walking around on eggshells. And like you said, well, they're crazy. You got to deal with them because you don't know when the right hook's coming and when the left hook's coming and when you need to duck. So I'm going to do a little bit of hormones 101 here before the top of the hour. And let's get this straight. And it's really simple. Day one is the first day of a woman's menstrual cycle. In a perfect world, a woman's cycle should be 29.5, somewhere 32, 35 days, something like that. And I did say perfect world. But approximately 14 days after she gets her period, ovulation takes place. Now, that's when her hormones rise, a few days after her period, which is a great relief for a lot of women. And we'll get to the other phase in a moment. Her hormones start rising, and all of a sudden, where she was in the hellhole of her mind, she's starting to feel better about life. And all of a sudden, you go, okay, all right, I can stop walking on eggshells here for a little bit. And the hormones keep rising until ovulation, all right, when she is fertile. And then a week after that, things are pretty copacetic still in most cases. Some women experience a severe hormone drop right after ovulation. But based on this premise, you got a third week in there, guys. And then in that fourth week, that's when it all goes to hell in a handbag, because in the fourth week, that's when her hormone levels drop, her immune system becomes more compromised, and because we're living in a testosterone-driven world, she, along with you, and you guys pull it off fairly easily, except you usually drop dead of a heart attack by the time you retire, she is trying to hold on like a tightrope, because she's a cycling babe in a testosterone-driven world, meaning that it's minute after minute, hour after hour, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, and you guys are good. Your hormones don't fluctuate the same way. And here she's like on a roller coaster. Why? Because it's not her reality. This is not our reality. Life would be different if we were lived with cycles. Now, this is what gave women power many, many, many moons ago. And I've got this in my book, Understanding Your Mind, Moon, and Hormone Cycle, 25,000 BC. We've got a picture of a antler bone where the menstrual cycle and the moon were etched into this bone, and there are many artifacts like this, and there are many symbols like this that have made it through lifetimes that we can see, but we don't understand the historical context of them. Women were the first to understand the power of cycles, and because of their menstrual cycle moved with the lunar cycle. The lunar cycle governs this planet. When the moon rises, life rises. When the moon wanes, we wane. Circadian rhythms, our bodies dance to that rhythm. That is what the endocrine system is all about, the body's regulator and the regulating organs. And it comes from the pineal gland in the brain and goes all the way down to the uterus. In fact, the brain is the largest endocrine gland in the body, and that's where hormone production starts. Every cell in our body cycles to this dance of the universe. Women were the first mathematicians. They were the first agriculturalists. They were the first healers. They were the first midwives because they understood cycles. And that is what we have forgotten. All of us. All of us. And when you live outside the dance of the universe, Chuck, you die. That's it.
That's it. When you're out of sync with your environment and the world around you, this is when life becomes a whole lot more difficult, regardless of what situation we're talking about. And here's the thing: to deal with this in a harmonious way, women have to deal with things in cycles. There is a difference, and men don't necessarily endure the same thing. So our reality, the way that we have shaped reality thus far, has been entirely different than what it would have been. Really quickly, I just wanted to make sure, you can find Leslie Carol Botha at the Liberty Beacon Radio Network, which is at tlbtowncrier.com on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern. Okay, right. Just so everybody knows, it's a 1-hour show, but it's always packed with information like this, but this is a little different because this is, somebody who... I really do feel quite inadequate talking to you because you're talking about a whole variety of things that I have very little understanding of for most of my life. Like I said, I'm just becoming aware of this stuff. And just to make you aware of something, Kim has actually joined with me. So say hello to Leslie, Kim.
Hi, Leslie. How are you?
I'm good, Kim. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. Well, yeah, Chuck and I have been having a spirited conversation. That's for sure.
Well, I've heard.
And I'm trying to open a door of understanding between women and men. We both sexes need to be empowered. We both have been so belittled and demonized. You know, the men as the abusers and the women are the victims and the women are hormonal rages and blah blah blah. And it has to stop. And it has to stop through education. And good evidence-based education, again, which is in my book, Understanding Your Mind, Mood, and Hormone Cycle. Everything is referenced and footnoted. Women we have to get to a place of partnership, which means, men, you keep your pants zipped up, and when a woman says no, she means no, and you figure out another way to take out your frustration. You know, I mean, we're not vessels, for God's sake.
Well, I also think part of the problem is there's a lot more put on a woman's shoulders than on men.
Yeah.
If both work full time, the woman comes home. I don't know if we've gotten into. I was with the baby, so I don't know if we've gotten into talking about after having a baby. But
you're going to get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you want me to hold that comment then for?
No, but go ahead. This is your story, right? Tell your story.
The woman comes home and she now has to be a mother for 8 hours.
Yeah. And
then has to be a wife. The man comes home, and what are his responsibilities? So it's not just hormonal. I think it's also societal as well. Because as little girls, we're taught to, what are our toys? A little ironing board, a little stove.
Yeah.
We're taught that we are the nurturers. And we take care of
the caretakers. You're absolutely right.
So that's part of it as well. It's I agree with the hormonal because I can tell you horror stories with mine, but it is also how we're raised as little girls. Now, I'm 44, so
indoctrinated, Kim, indoctrinated, and that's what it has been. And you are right. And it's just an inequity. Even in the home. And when inequity exists in the home, men and women don't even have a chance. Yeah, I think you might have missed the first part of the program when I was telling Chuck and the listeners that there is a pill that the FDA is reviewing, an antidepressant that failed 3 times to get approval by the FDA, but now the manufacturer has repackaged it as a pill to increase women's libido. So as an antidepressant, yeah, right. Yeah, we could talk about that one. But as an antidepressant, what does that mean? At the end of this day where women are holding down multiple tasks, multiple jobs, and she pops this pill so that she could have some sort of libido. What is that really what's happening? I mean, am I understanding antidepressants could sort of numb you down and make you a zombie? And is that what men want? Is someone laying on their back, kind of zoned out, while their legs are spread? Is that the kind of sex you want? Is that the kind of relationship that you want? And that's what's going on before the FDA right now. The first female pill for women for their sex to function. It's horrible.
Well, I can tell you that I might not have even been 2 days after I delivered my son, the obstetrician was prescribing me Prozac.
Oh, my God.
And
did you breastfeed?
No, I wasn't able to.
And this is, I saw this a year ago, 1 or 2 years ago. I'm a great news hound, and I love to watch the crap news because I want to see, like Good Morning America, because I want to see the messages in the trailer. or what's being marketed to women. Best place to find out what's going on. But they actually had a whole segment, Kim, about prescribing women pills so they can be happy mommies, a better mommy, and explaining what you just said, giving women Prozac and Xanax so they can be better mommies.
Right.
And what they're doing is creating addicts, because that's how the brain works. And I hope we get into this in the second hour, Chuck. That's how the brain works. You know, the brain gets used to that level of drug, and then all of a sudden it goes, that's not enough anymore. You know, I really need more. and that's called an addiction.
I cannot take Xanax. I am addicted to them.
Of course. That's how they're made. And when your brain isn't getting the nutrients it needs, it will latch on to anything to make it feel good. Right. And so it's either porn, drugs, alcohol, whatever.
Yeah, see, and just a couple of defensive notes here really quickly. You know, first of all, Kim's not taking the Xanax currently. Okay, just so we understand. And also, you know, I'm also not, just in my own defense here, I'm not the male that throws the baby on the mommy. That's not the way that I conduct myself. In fact, you know, most of the day, actually, I'm the one taking care of the infant. So, but there is this problem, you know, regarding where the roles are supposed to be. And meanwhile, you're confounded with the hormonal reactions. You know, some of them natural, some of them though. You know, like when they gave her that prescription for Prozac, the first thing I said, what was the first thing I said to you?
You're not taking that.
You know, I said this is a big mistake that this doctor is making here, and. It's ludicrous to introduce this.
It is the trend. I mean, I saw it on TV, and Kim's telling me it in reality, and that's the point. And I'm glad that you both chose that was not the direction you wanted to go, but it's happening. And think of what is happening to mothers who are taking this drug while they are breastfeeding, or I've heard hundreds of stories of other women who are put on synthetic hormones right after delivering a baby and breastfeeding. So here's the deal. The deal is that there are studies that have shown that 256 heavy metals, toxins, and including BPA radiation are being passed through the umbilical cord. 256. And then we're adding vaccines. Well, is it any, I mean, really, I mean, is it a surprise to anybody that we've got such a high rate of autism in this country? I mean, even Jerry Seinfeld was on the NBC Nightly News last night. Again, I watched mainstream news to see what's being marketed and talked about. And he was talking to Brian Williams of NBC Nightly News and says, you know, I think I'm on the autism spectrum disorder for such and such reasons. You know, and it's 1 in 68, 1 in 22 in New Jersey. By the year 2025, it's going to be 1 in 2. Mm-hmm. And that's the future of this country, folks.
Well, we've chosen not to vaccinate our son.
Good. I'm glad. My sons were not vaccinated. The first time they had to get a vaccine was going into 7th grade when they had to get, I think it was MMR.
Right.
But you know what? By that time, their immune systems were developed and intact. The stories that I'm hearing, and I'm very involved on the vaccine issue, are just horrific. In fact, I attended the Autism One conference in Chicago at the end of May, and I was fine. You get me with researchers, scientists, educators, I can hold my ground. You walk me into a room that's playing karaoke with beautiful mothers, beautiful fathers, there hooting and hollering, living it up for a weekend, and I'm reduced in tears because these were people, parents, families who played by the rules. And now they're paying the price and their lives are ruined. And the big question is, who the hell is going to take care of these children when the parents are dead? This is going to change our whole social structure. And I'm infuriated by it. Infuriated by the whole issue. These are neurotoxins and DNA of insects, dogs, pigs, cows that are being injected into our children. It's a barnyard of foreign DNA that's being injected into our children in combination with heavy metal toxins. Where is the common sense?
And poorly performing preservatives also being introduced to keep all this stuff from actually going bad on the shelf, which are absolutely detrimental to brain cells, causing all sorts of cognitive disorders. I mean, a wide spectrum of cognitive disorders, even outperforming the idea that it's simply an issue of autism. There are a whole lot of other residual effects. The rise in later in life problems. Let's name a few, right?
It's autism at the beginning of the spectrum. It's chronic fatigue syndrome in the middle of the spectrum, middle age, and it's Alzheimer's at the end of the spectrum, and that is all vaccine damage.
Right. That's exactly where I was going, Leslie, and you just put it straight and direct a lot faster. We are already in that second hour, by the way, just so you know.
Yes, I'm watching the clock, yeah.
Okay.
I thought we had a break, but obviously we don't have a break, and so we're going right into it.
Exactly.
So did you hear Hormones 101, Kim? Were you part of that?
No, I was taking care of the baby.
Okay. All right. Here's the deal. Let me go back to saying this, folks. We're not Homo sapiens. We're Homo luminescent beings. Science has shown that. Neuroscience is the most fascinating field. If I was at a place to go back to college and young enough to go back to college and not on my own path, I'd be going into the field of neuroscience. Two things. The brain can heal itself. The brain never ages. Neuroscience is showing this with brain imaging and scanning. It is the most fascinating thing. And it was my path getting into addiction recovery, and not as an addict, but as a marketing person, that opened my world and forever changed my world. In fact, I listened, and I'm sure I said this on your other show, the other show that we did, Chuck, and I'm going to mention it again because it's so important, because it rocked my world. I hope it rocks other people's worlds. At the end of a webinar on neuroscience and how the brain changes, and looking at images and scans and seeing how the brain can change given the right care and feeding. We'll get into that in a minute. Mm-hmm. That this brilliant neuroscientist from Neuroscience Incorporated came out and said, let me put it this way, if everybody's neurotransmitters were balanced, we'd be a society filled with happy, healthy, spiritual, compassionate, trusting people. And then I realized, that statement just rocked my world. And then I realized what it's like to live in the hellhole of your brain. People with anger management issues, serial killers, abusers. And by the way, abusers have the same symptoms of people who have been head injured. And how many men have been head injured from falls, from concussions, from football, basketball, soccer, wrestling. Oh, there's a good one. Boxing. There's another good one. Oh, Muhammad Ali is a great example of that. Parkinson's disease. And if it all happens in the frontal lobe of the brain, trauma, whether it's physical or grief, affects the neurotransmitters in the brain. Now, the brain has been disregarded for years. It's just this gray blob between our ears. Well, now we know through neuroscience that the brain is actually the circuitry of the body. Mm-hmm. It is the motherboard. And when the motherboard ain't happy, nobody's happy. And what is happening is generationally, we are getting less and less nutrients out of our food, less and less minerals out of our food than ever before. Our kids are growing up with microwaves and processed foods. They don't know a rutabaga from a potato. And yet we are biochemical, and it's our biochemical state that dictates our personality. Science, evidence-based. That is important to know.
See, and I was trying to explain to Kim earlier today what you and I had discussed at one point about how drug addiction is essentially the same behavioral problem that somebody has when they insist on being confrontational, when they insist on causing all of these things that just seem to be self-destructive. In so many different ways, that it's really the brain absolutely driving the rest of the being to do things in order to receive certain stimulus that it should be getting from natural things that we're supposed to be eating, that we're supposed to be consuming, that we're supposed to be in one way or another receiving. I mean, even sunlight, for instance, is one of those things that causes your brain chemistry to change.
Absolutely.
If you're what will we say here? If you're sort of deprived for certain vitamins that it does not receive, right?
Right, exactly. These emotions, compulsive behaviors, addictions, depression, anxiety, mania, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, autism, ADHD, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, are an emotional response to a brain gone bad.
Mm-hmm.
Postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, now known as maternal mental illness, Kim, did you know that? Premenstrual syndrome, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, as I mentioned before, is now classified as a mental illness, a brain gone bad. What were you going to say?
They diagnosed me with that when I was in my late 30s.
PMDD?
Mm-hmm.
So, when did you have your child?
Well, I have 2 older children. I had our son when I was 43.
So what has happened is, and what we don't realize, we're still thinking somehow that babies are brought by the stork and dropped off at the patio, right? And everybody brings the baby in, and everybody's happy and having a great time in the glorious days of postpartum. Not so, because what has sadly happened is that every generation now has less of a nutritional reserve than the generation before. I mean, when people live with wood stoves, myself included for many years, we would dump the ashes in the garden. Well, what are ashes from a wood stove? Minerals. Minerals. Where are we getting our minerals from these days? Nowhere. We used to eat out of our gardens. Minerals were in the soil. All right, we know very little about minerals. So each generation now has become more nutritionally deficient, especially with the advent of microwaves, which actually change the DNA of food and take out any nutritional content in the food. And for those of you who are out of convenience, microwaving your in plastic, which is all your microwavable foods, you're setting off a chemical firestorm with estrogen mimickers. And those estrogen mimickers are wreaking havoc on women, men, and children's bodies, so that we now have children going into puberty as early as age 6, 8, which I also saw an interesting news program. And there is an article in a UK paper about, because young girls are getting breast buds at an early age and menstruating at an early age.
Well, I think there's a lot to do.
They are becoming victimized and raped and looked at as sexual objectification. In fact, this article came out of a paper in the UK, Mail Online, Sex at 12 is not normal, Mr. Clegg. It's illegal. There was some guy in the UK who said, "Yep, that's normal." All right, it was a Department of Education guidelines endorsed by Nick Clegg now state that penetrative and oral sex should be regarded as normal behavior for 13-year-olds. Really?
Well, it's becoming more normal because of the, Kim was saying that the increase in the hormones in the food, too. There's a hormonal base in, like dairy products and things like that, in poultry. Of course, the estrogen mimickers that you're talking about, it's the over-sexualization of the female populace, right?
It is that, and synthetic hormones have played a huge role in that, not only for women and men, but actually the runoff of those synthetic hormones are and other estrogen mimickers, which include makeup, perfume, household cleaners, dryer cloths. What am I thinking of, Kim? Here, the little sheets, your dryer sheets,
static sheets.
The static sheets you put in your dryer and to make your clothes smell good,
right.
Estrogen mimickers, sunscreen, and they're mutating into females. You guys are doomed. I'll tell you what, you're doomed. If women can't take over the world the real way, we're going to take over the world because we're eradicating all of you guys because of too much estrogen in the waterways, and a lot of filtering plants don't know how to handle that.
See, and this is one of my more controversial contentions, is that because the sort of sexual norms have also been altered by this over-driven estrogen in the water and food supply through various means. I mean, not only does like things like bisphenol A and various leaching plastics cause this type of effect. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. Thank you for bringing it up.
But this has also caused, like you said, the early onset of puberty, earlier menstruation cycles, earlier development of sex organs in women. But same time, let's not forget the male population is getting the same crap, and what is that doing? But it's altering the male's endocrine system. We're not supposed to have this much estrogen and estrogen mimickers introduced into our systems either. And this is a frightening concept. It has caused, like I said, even the norms in sexual behavior have changed.
Cancer. That's what it's caused. Cancer. In fact, let me tell you about this. In January 1970, experts assembled in the stately Senate chamber and began giving their testimony on the hazards of the birth control pill. Now, let me go back a little bit farther, saying that the birth control pill, the first pill in the 60s, was trialed on women in Puerto Rico, and they said, hell no. Hell no. But it was still introduced into the market in the 1960s here in America. And 70 was the first hearing on this. Alice Wolfson, a member of the Radical Collective, DC Women's Liberation, was sitting in the audience listening to the experts. Her group had come to the hearings because they had all taken the pill at one time or another and had experienced side effects. The group was outraged that their doctors had never informed them of the risks when they prescribed the pill. As they sat in the chamber and heard one male witness after another describe serious health risks, they were furious that there wasn't a single woman who had taken the pill there to testify. In fact, the women had to sit in the gallery, in the balcony. So, and there was a medical expert who stood up and said in 1970, a male medical expert, that estrogen is to cancer like fertilizer is to wheat.
Well, an overabundance is the problem. If it was the natural amount, and here's the thing, those pills, which during the time when I was growing up, in my teenage and early adulthood, it started to become known, but kind of quietly, that the birth control pills that were out at the time could very easily lead to stroke, heart attack, cancer,
breast cancer,
breast cancer
loss,
especially,
Hair loss is huge right now amongst women, even in their 20s. A whole, and not only, and just mental, emotional issues. They are steroids. How many athletes have we taken down because they're on steroids? And yet we've got women, millions of women, trialing the pill. It's been called the largest uncontrolled experiment in medical history, who are trialing the pill, suffering from these side effects. And pardon me?
I guinea pig for it when I was in my early 20s.
Right on.
They put me on one, and
then they put you on another.
Right, and
then they put you on another.
I'm pretty easygoing. I don't care if, the garbage doesn't get taken out that night. But I'll tell you what, I did when I was on those pills, damn it. You're going to take out that damn garbage, and you're going to do it now. I turned into a tyrant, and that's not my nature.
That's what drugs do to our biochemical nature. Exactly.
And the missing of those drugs was another thing that I saw again in my adolescence and in my early adulthood, because suddenly, and I don't know, I'm sure you're aware of this actually, Leslie, because you know all this stuff already. But the thing is, you recall that they started giving them to younger and younger girls who weren't using it for birth control anymore. It was to regulate their cycles because of ovarian cysts and all this stuff, which suddenly did explode in the population. But there were a variety of other what would you call those problems exactly? I mean, I'm just going to be blunt and ignorant here. Other female problems, let's just say, that men could not possibly have. They were introducing the birth control pills to 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, because supposedly to help them treat other ailments. So they were repurposed for that as well.
The pill, 63% of women who are on synthetic hormones are not sexually active. Let's put it this way. The pill is being given to young girls and to women from everything for acne to a broken ankle. And that's, broken ankle is what my snarky remark in there. But, really, hello. Come on. 63% not sexually active. They're on the pill to regulate their periods. They put women on HRT to regulate menopause. They're steroids. Cancer-causing steroids. We better get it straight. And you guys wondering why your women are so whacked out? They're on steroids, for God's sake.
Well, there was another medicine that they prescribed to bring the period on. And, in fact, they did that to me, and I ended up having a miscarriage. I didn't have my period because I was pregnant. And they took a pregnancy test, and it came out negative. And a week went by, and I still didn't have my period, so they gave me this medicine. Well, I ended up miscarrying. So it's always they always want to give you some sort of prescription for something.
Yep.
But I think what needs to be done, instead of giving out medication for every single ailment that somebody might come to you with, the doctor with, is how about learning how to just communicate as well. There's no communication anymore.
No, there's no communication anymore. You got 15 minutes with your doctor, and that's about it. And he is being bought out by the pharmaceutical companies. I mean, women can't walk into a doctor's office without being pressured to go on some sort of synthetic hormone or to get vaccinated. And with the Gardasil HPV vaccine, a very, very dangerous vaccine that's given to women and young girls at the most dangerous time of their lives, which is menarche, the time of first menstruation, when their endocrine system starts functioning. So let me go backtrack a little bit on that. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists came out with new guidelines for teens, and the pill is actually passé because of human error, because too many women/girls don't remember to take their pill every day. Well, has anyone considered we're giving the pill to girls at a younger and younger age, and 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old girls can't remember to lock the car door or the house door, let alone take a pill every day. And it doesn't protect them from STDs. So the FDA or ACOG, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, is recommending implants synthetic hormones or the patch, all synthetic hormones. And they mentioned the implant by name, which was Implanon, and I thought, well, that's really interesting. I wonder who makes Implanon, which is a rod. It's an implant that goes into a woman's arm that can get lost in the muscle. And these things drip synthetic hormones up to weeks at a time. In fact, Depo-Provera, which is an injection, we're now calling the birth control vaccine.
Oh, I did that after my first daughter was born. Wow, I'm loaded with all kinds of poison.
Whacked. You got whacked. Suppression of progesterone. Let's go back to that in a minute. And so this is what they're recommending for these young girls. So Implanon, and I thought, well, who the hell manufactures Implanon? Well, it turns out it's Merck Pharmaceutical Company, Merck and Company, the good old boys. And there they are standing on one side of the fence marketing a birth control method that does not protect a young girl from STDs. In fact, immature girls getting these things think they're safe and they know nothing about STDs. And then on the other side of the fence, they're marketing their HPV vaccine, Gardasil, to protect against cervical cancer.
All right,
and it's wrong. It's unethical. It's immoral. It's a collusion.
And in addition, I can't remember exactly which company, but one of the ones that is part of that whole cabal, let's just say, is also the same people that brought you the Norplant, which they've sort of swept away from history at this point. But that was prevalent at one point in time, and it's essentially the same type of dripping rod that you end up with in the muscle.
Dripping rod, I love it.
Well, yes, I'm sorry.
And it was taken off the market here because there were 4 of those dripping rods. Now, let me tell you what Bill Gates is up to. And this is going to happen in 3 years. And I got a lot of work to do in 3 years, Chuck, and you're going to help me. And you too, Kim. Bill Gates, our favorite person of the year, Bill Gates, is going to bring a new birth control method on the market in 3 years. It is a microchip that will be inserted into women's arms that will drip synthetic hormones into their bodies for up to 16 years, and that will be controlled by a remote. Now, Kim, who controls the remote in your family?
Well, I'd like to think I do.
Yeah, well, let's get beyond what we'd like to think, right?
Yeah.
Who controls the goddamn remote in your family, right? It's men who control the remote. Who's going to control that remote? And a woman has to go into her doctor and say, "Whoops, I'd like to get pregnant now." And he said, "Well, let me turn off that remote, or let me, turn off those synthetic hormones."
Well, and what's that going to do to the fetus? I mean,
exactly.
Every time you turn on the television, there's a new medication that they're warning you about. If you or a loved one is dead, you might be able to collect money. So, 10 years from now, they're going to find out that our babies are being born, with heart problems, or, they're fertile, or they're sterile, rather, excuse me.
All of that is happening right now.
So it's very alarming. And,
it is very alarming. We have to wake up. We have to stop it. And the only way to stop it is becoming empowered. And that's
the thing I wanted to get to, because we are actually getting down to that last half hour. And,
thank you.
And I wanted to say this. We've talked about a lot of really diabolic sort of things that go on. We've talked about a lot of terrible situations, things that damage children, things that damage women, things that damage the society because of the relationships between men and women, the lack of understanding, the dysfunction, the big pharma cabal that handles this stuff. I mean, yeah, they're not just trying to make customers out of people that want to feel good or that have painkillers, but also those that are just simply trying to do what they used to call family planning. Okay, all of it is about creating customers, creating sick people so that you can continue to profit. Okay, and that is part of the bottom line. But there is actually hope for this stuff, regardless of the damage, regardless of the seemingly impossible cycle of insanity. Because again, here I am, the guy on the broadcast, telling you that it just seems like insanity to me. The hormonal shifts that I witness, I figured that this was a natural part of feminine being. this sort of a lack of control, this lack of sense according to me, because my reality does not function the same way. Okay,
Good point. Excellent point.
Yep. As we already covered. But there's actually hope for this stuff, and I wanted to get into that just a bit and begin to touch on it, because there are actually solutions for these things regarding taking back the power, so to speak, in one's own life, in one's own body. And I'm not familiar with this stuff because, again, I'm a man. So
none of us are, but you're right. It is, and as Dickens said, it's the worst of times and it's the best of times, and that's what keeps me on my path. Because even though I read articles every day about how pollutants are affecting the fetus, glycophosphate is affecting women's health, vaccines affecting, as we said, autism, chronic fatigue syndrome, middle years, and Alzheimer's. What we've neglected to understand until now is the role that nutrition plays. And that's where we bring women's voices back into the conversation, because it was our grandmothers who said eat. Do you know what the miracle of chicken soup is? Minerals.
Right.
And
Hold on just a second. Hold on just a second, because I brought Daniel Lewis Crumpton in. I want you to hold on, Daniel, just for a minute, because I want Leslie to finish her thought. I also want to get to your website. We mentioned your book a few times. We've mentioned your radio show, but you also have the blog and a few other things. And I wanted to get that in really quickly before we do run out of time. So would you mind pointing?
Sure. Yeah, my blog is holyhormones.com. My show is on the Liberty Beacon Project, the town Liberty Beacon TLB Town Crier. Wednesday nights at 5:00. I cover everything hormonal, all things hormonal, and I'm a strong proponent for women. And if I don't do this, if I don't stay in the radio, if I don't keep just talking to all of you good folks out there, because you're all good folks, all of this knowledge and wisdom is going to be lost. We need to bring women's voices back into the conversation, and not voices of pain, and not voices of rage, and not voices of depression. We need to bring healthy women's voices back into the conversation, and science is now catching up with women's intuition about eating and nutrition, and that's what we're lacking. We've gotten so used to saying, "Oh, I'm not feeling good, I guess I got to go to the doctor." It's not that anything's wrong with you folks. You got to start changing the paradigm and start saying, well, what am I deficient in? What am I not getting? What mineral, what vitamin, what amino acid, what am I not getting? And this is when my whole world changed, when I walked into this addiction recovery ranch and I said to God, really? You're sending me to an addiction recovery ranch working with the Dredge Society? Really? And it changed my world. These were some of the most creative, brilliant people I ever met. But their brains were so starved for nutrition that the brain latched onto anything to make it feel good. That's how the body functions. Now, for women, every pregnancy we go through takes vital vitamins, amino acids, minerals, enzymes out of our reserve. Well, it's like the bank. You got a savings account. And you deplete the savings account. You got nothing left. Kim? What's your question?
Well, I think that a dietitian should also be included in one of the visits that come in to see you.
Doctors have a few hours of nutrition. I agree with you totally. I agree, but we don't even have to have it. Yeah, and breastfeeding. That even takes more nutrients out of a woman's body. And then you had 2 or 3 pregnancies, and every day we wake up, we put our feet on the ground, we get our first cup of coffee. What are we doing? We're burning off nutrients. And if you're not getting them back, and you ain't getting it through fast foods, folks, you ain't getting it through your microwave, and we're not aging anymore. Aging's gone. We're not aging. We're disintegrating.
And we don't, as mothers, from my own experience, your babies get up in the middle of the night, so your sleep is also jacked.
Hormone imbalance, and it all adds to hormone imbalance. In fact, there's a new term out called circadian rhythm disorder. Now, where am I going with this? There was a product developed 15 years ago out of Canada called TrueHope.com. TrueHope.com. It has now been licensed to another company called QSciences.com. And the senior editor from WebMD, Dr. Stephen Kimberly, sits on their scientific advisory board. He just wrote a brilliant explanation of how this product works, and I sent that to you, Chuck, yesterday. And it is a combination of 36 vital, essential micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, and amino acids that target the brain so the brain can start functioning. Most of us are nutritionally depleted. We don't have to be labeled. Now, the product was initially developed for bipolar disorder. The company had to fight Health Canada, who wanted to close them down based on pressure of the pharmaceutical companies. They fought Health Canada and they won. They've now gotten 100,000 people off their bipolar medications. Women are normally bipolar. Why? Our hormones rise, our hormones fall. It's how manic our hormones rise, how fast they rise, and it's how deep we go into the hellhole on the other side of ovulation, and we go into that depression. You know, hormone shifts are like a gentle wave, like the moon rising, waning, and waxing. We just passed the full moon last night, all right? And that's how it should be, just a gentle rise and wane on the other side. But women, it's like climbing up Mount Everest and sliding down the other side. And that's what we've become. And that's what we've accepted. And that's what you men have accepted, that we're crazy. We're not crazy. We're nutritionally depleted, and every single pregnancy we go through takes more nutrients out of our body. And you add synthetic hormones and steroids and psychotropic drugs, all depleting nutrients out of our body, men and women, and we feel like we're crazy. Plus, you put us in a reality that doesn't even make sense to us. And that compounds our feelings of craziness. For 3 weeks out of the month, we can pretty much maintain and handle anything. That fourth week, when our women's voice, our intuition, our spirituality comes into play, which we're told to deny and take 2 Xanax and go home, honey. I call it whatever. But we're told to drug it and forget about it. Well, that's like drugging your true self. And women are so afraid to go there because we can see with clarity what the hell is wrong with our lives. And where that relationship seemed okay, where we could multitask and drive the kids to school, go to work, hold a 40-hour job, come home and do another 8 hours, as Kim says, in that fourth week, we cannot handle it.
We're tired.
That's where you men come in. That's what I taught these boys at the at-risk home. That's what I taught these girls, because they all hated their mothers. You know, this is what's going on with your mother. If you step in and say, Mom, can I help you with the laundry? And Chuck, knowing that you're not getting dinner that night, you can come in the door and say, honey, take out, or would you like to go out? Problem solved. We don't need a friggin' pilled antidepressant pill for sex. We need men. We need men who are understanding what's going on with us, but we need to understand what's going on with us first, and to be there and say, honey, I'll do that. I'll take the kids to school. Hey, can I pitch in and do the laundry? That's what women need more than anything else, and our libido would be alive and well.
No doubt.
Yeah, right, Kim? I know I got you on that one. It's just we drop into bed exhausted, and the best thing to say is, I got a headache. And most oftentimes we do have a headache. So what I'm saying to you is that QSciences.com, TrueHope.com, and this is a fabulous story, and I have time to tell the story, and I'm going to tell the story. In 1996, I saw a picture in a paper somewhere in Colorado about a family in Utah. It was a picture of a family, mother, father, and 9 kids, and the headline was, Woman Commits Suicide After 2 Weeks on Prozac. And I went, oh my God! I was just becoming aware of SSRIs and what they were all about. And 4 years ago, my friend Teresa, who I had just met through another organization, came down to Boulder and said, "Come on down for this energy healing weekend." And I went, "Okay, I'll meet you there." And during the weekend, she says, "I want to show you this PowerPoint about my company." I said, "That's fine." And the very first slide she picks up is this picture of this family that I saw in 1996. And I went, yeah, my skin was crawling, right? It was like, oh my God. And so it turns out that the widower, Anthony Steffen, the father, left with 9 children. His wife had died from a severe form of bipolar disorder. In fact, her father had committed suicide when she was 16 from bipolar disorder. And it's a bipolar disorder, rapid cycling, schizophrenic effects. And he was left with 2 out of 9 children who had the same disorder. And the doctors were telling him, all you can do is institutionalize your kids, put them on drugs and institutionalize them. His son had severely aggressive behavior, was removed from school, and his daughter, Autumn Stringham, who now is speaking as many engagements as possible, was checking herself in and out of psych institutions, psych wards, to protect herself and her family from herself. The mania and then the depression on the other side. And she had 2 children. And so she was neurochemically imbalanced, being born into this world. And then she had 2 more children who further depleted her nutritional reserves. And she was in and out of psych wards. So one weekend, so I'm jumping ahead. So Anthony went to his church, the father, and with his son, and said to this man that he met at church who was in the veterinary feed business, saying, "This is what my son exhibits." And the man says, "Well, that's really interesting because it sounds really similar to pig ear tail chasing disease. And we give them these supplements, these minerals, and not only does it calm them down, but it calms down everybody and everyone, all the other pigs in the pen. The pigs in the pen." So, right, we all know that this is a ripple effect, right? Mm-hmm. Mania, rage, depression, addiction, all ripples out and affects everyone in the family. And so they spent the next 10 years taking these mineral supplements and developed them into human-grade supplements. And with the science evolving as it has, developed this supplement, the Empower Plus, and now they've been successful in getting 100,000 people off their bipolar medication. And they're using it for depression, anxiety, schizophrenia. There's studies on autism, ADHD, which was a huge groundbreaking study that happened earlier this year. And it's also being used for postpartum depression, premenstrual syndrome, and premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Now, Kim, you already had a severe hormone imbalance, and Depo-Provera depletes progesterone, which is a feel-good hormone. It suppresses it. It doesn't deplete it. It suppresses it. And Depo is a very dangerous drug. In fact, it's also been used and is being used as a castration tool for male sex offenders in prison.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely. Really. Now, imagine if it was marketed to women like that, the birth control vaccine, right? And so they developed this product and now has 25 independent published studies behind it. It's on my blog at holyhormones.com through Q Sciences. It's called Empower Plus Q96. And I consult with women all of the time and have had great success with this supplement, and women getting pregnant who have not been able to get pregnant, women who are resolving their depression, their anxiety, their agoraphobia, their hair loss, just by adding supplements and a bioavailable supplement to their diet. Now, the deal is, we all go out, we buy our vitamins, right? We all go out, we buy our minerals. We're such very good sheeple. But minerals are not effective unless they are in synergistic ratio with each other, just like estrogen and progesterone has to be in ratio with each other to be effective in the body. This world is built on cycles and it's built on ratios. It is such a mathematically, intricately designed universe. It boggles the mind. Alfred Einstein, Stephen Hawking, all of them are boggled by the universe. And these are our top thinkers and that we revere. And yet it is fundamentally simplistic. Cycles and ratios. So these minerals have to be in ratio. Plus they've chelated and micronized this supplement over 96 hours, 4 days, not 70, a couple of days like most supplements are. So it's bioavailable. So it gets absorbed immediately, and it does not get stuck in the digestive tract where so many of us have gut issues. And you feel the effects of these minerals because they light up the motherboard. They light up the neural circuitry in the brain. They start repairing those neural pathways. So you take an angry or a depressed person, and all of a sudden, they're less depressed. They're less angry because they're caught up like an addict in the hellhole of their brain, and they don't know how to get out. And that's how we have to start looking at people and not judging them.
Right, and just because I've been holding him off for quite a while, I know he wants to make I know he's been chomping at the bit to add to this conversation, and good to have one more male voice on anyway. Daniel, I know I've kept you on hold a while. I hope you haven't fallen asleep on me. You there, sir?
Yes. Yeah, I'm good. For one thing, Miss Botha, I've been listening. I've been trying to not call in because I've done that to Chuck so many times, but I've been monitoring the message boards. I don't know if you have, and there are so many people. I'm rather disappointed because you make so many good points about how the masculine has been antagonistic to the feminine for the past 2,000 years. Everything that you said tonight is scientifically backed. Everything that you said tonight is philosophically backed. But there have been so many people who have, in the message boards, I'm kind of disappointed, to tell you the truth, because what you're saying is actually substantiated by so many different philosophies and so many different schools of thought. One of the things that people need to understand is they have to connect all the spiritual with the physical and all this sort of things. For the past 2,000 years, we have lived under a misogynistic control system where the feminine has been oppressed. And thankfully now, after 2012, I believe, it's starting to become more relevant that the feminine divine is coming to an awakening, so to speak. We've suffered so much of the feminine being pushed down, being oppressed, being persecuted, that some of the things you're saying resonate with me so much, and I would hope that other people really resonate with it. And a lot of people in the message boards have been calling you some rather awkward things. I'm very disappointed in that because what you're saying is the truth.
Well, you know what? It's frightening to some people, Daniel, and this is what the problem is. It absolutely upsets their worldview, and for those that think that they are awake and they're listening to this show, I'm watching the same thing that you are, and I know that doesn't necessarily represent everybody who's going to hear what we've talked about tonight, and I'll tell you what. Here's the deal, folks. Think about this for a minute. The frustration that you deal with trying to explain to people that their history has been, a lie, that the left-right paradigm is a lie which has been perpetrated on you. Guess what? Open your minds a little more. There is many more lies that have been laid on us for a whole lot longer than you think. And one of them is the marginalization and the mishandling of clearly half of what is necessary for our species to exist. The feminine has been absolutely mischaracterized, twisted, distorted, and warped according to conventional wisdom for a very long time. This is what... Go ahead.
And persecuted.
And persecuted. You know, I mean, the women who did this, the suffragists, were persecuted. Women are persecuted every single day.
Miss Botha, I'm sure you're aware of Lilith. I mean,
Yes.
you know, if we were to take it to a spiritual level, we go back to the book of Genesis, we find out that Adam had a wife before Eve, and she was created co-equal. And, you know, according to, you know, to Jewish Talmud, Talmudic revelation, this woman was created co-equal with man. It was not supposed to be that the man was above the woman. It was supposed to be co-equal. And when Lilith was overpowered by Adam, she hit skids. You know, she left. And then you had Eve, this subservient woman. You know, so in the beginning, it was supposed to be man and woman as co-equals, and we've gotten away from that. And for the past 2,000 years, women have been so persecuted. You know, men have gotten to the point to where they do not respect the idea that male represents left brain, logic and aggression, things of that nature, and right brain represents female, intuition. You know, and thankfully, you know, people who are in the quote-unquote New Age movement are starting to recognize that now the feminine divine is coming back, and that it's essential that we trust women's intuition on things like this. You know, there are men out there who are starting to do this. It's rare.
Absolutely, and kudos to them. And there are many men, and I have great hope for women and men coming up who are shaking off the veil. I mean, it's hard stuff. I mean, we're changing the paradigm, for heaven's sakes. Nobody likes change. It's much easier to label and to discriminate against people than it is to embrace people and try and understand them and uplift all of us. At one time, that's what we've been conditioned to do. And thank you for joining in. And thank you. No, I was not aware of the message board. I'm so glad I wasn't aware of the message board, because I'd be typing furiously as I'm trying to talk.
Well, it was making me so infuriated. You know, and I'm a frequent guest on Chuck's show, but that infuriated me because, you know, in fact, everything that you've said so far is not only scientifically true, but it's philosophically and spiritually true. And there are some people who can't let go of this indoctrination of male dominance. You know, it's a yin-yang.
Well, right, and let me throw something in here, Daniel, because here's something that is being missed. And some people are wondering probably why it is that I'm bothering to cover this subject and everything else. You know what the reality is, man. The bottom line is that we see that the interrelationships, the interpersonal relationships between human beings are extremely damaged and distressed. Whether it be because of the technologies, whether it be because of the paradigms which have been thrust upon us as societies, as individuals, as masses in one form or another. You know, if you don't think that the male and female interactions have also been twisted and warped in order to create a whole lot less symmetry among the populace, this is part of the game too. You know, and this has a lot to do with, again, that redacted history, that hidden reality, the disconnection from ourselves, okay? And you're not going to have a sound society. You're not going to have a balanced, you know, everybody's got their own idea of utopia. But how can you even imagine that if we can't even understand one another, if women don't understand themselves? And there are solutions to these things which are within your grasp. They're not the giant. You know what I'm saying here?
I'll tell you this. You made a comment earlier about the psychology of women. There's a joke that I like to recite a lot. It's that you know, there was this very righteous man, and God comes to him and says, you know, what do you want? What do you want? You know, if you could ask anything of me, what do you want? And he says, well, I would like a highway built from my home to my job that I could just go without traffic. Okay? And he says, well, you know, God says that's kind of a stretch. You know, what else do you want? He says, all right, well, can you explain women? And God says, do you want the highway 2 lanes or 4? You know, so there's that.
It's kind of the same thing I said, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
it's not that women aren't so, they're just right-brained. They're intuitive. And what men have to do, what the masculine has to do, is they have to understand that their role is logic and strategy and things like that, but they also have to trust the right brain. They have to trust the feminine intuition. You know, they say mothers have intuition, and you have to have that union of trust between logic and strategy and intuition, and, you know, you have to have that mix. And I think men have been conditioned for the past 2,000 years to be dominant, you know, and it's something that you got to let go of. You know, you really do have to let it go. And when you do, you're going to find something beautiful. You know, women are...
It's trust. It's trust. It's not control. Eve Ensler said in her book, and this just came out last year, it's In the Body of the World, a memoir of cancer and connection. And Eve Ensler is a great feminist of our time. Hysteria, a word to make women feel insane for knowing what they know. Right, Kim?
Right.
Hysteria, a word to make women feel insane for knowing what they know. And as long as women's voices are stifled, then we are becoming a nation who will be defeated because our women's hearts are on the ground.
Yeah.
Well, I think a woman also has to not allow herself to be a victim as well. So...
she has to be empowered with information. Absolutely. And that information is crucial. It has to start with body functioning. And as long as we control our vaginas, we're good to go. As long as we understand our hormone cycles, how to live with cycles, when to move mountains and when to take a break, and then when to move mountains again, then we become empowered because we're living with the dance of the universe. And I know that's a little hokey pokey for most of you folks out there on that chat board, but you know what? That's the way it is.
Yes, it is.
And here's the thing: if they understand themselves a lot better, guys, we might actually have a shot at it.
Absolutely, you guys know a lot. You guys are observing a lot. It's what you are seeing are women struggling. Your wives, your daughters struggling, and your daughters. And like I said in the first hour, they're at risk for being sex trafficked. You better start understanding what's going on, because a lot of the dysfunction in the home is hormone imbalance on the part of men and women, raging against each other and not understanding what's going on, and both being nutritionally depleted. If your brain ain't working, you don't have a shot in hell at having a happy life, of achieving the American dream. You're not aging, you're disintegrating. Get it through your heads. Oh, your head's not working. I forgot. Sorry about that.
Right. And look, we only have 2 minutes left, and wow. We have definitely covered a lot of ground, and you know what? If I've gotten anybody out there to think a little bit, I'm happy. If I've gotten you to take a look at this subject in a different way today, I'm happy, and I don't really care if you're angry at me or whatever else. I'm not a self-hating man or anything like that. I believe that both sides of this equation, both men and women, need to be empowered with knowledge, need to embrace the understanding that they have naturally, need to get back to being the human beings that they were intended to be, because we are both of us, men and women, are unique and interesting creatures which can contribute to this life in a way that is unique to ourselves. Leslie, is there anything that you want to make sure you get in just before my obnoxious bumper kicks in and knocks us off the air?
No, that's okay. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Kim. And I didn't catch the gentleman's name who joined us. And thank you, sir. Your words, you're backing up my women's intuition with science and philosophy means the world to me. And my co-author said the same. She said, when I first heard you spout off the stuff, I thought, wow, this is woo-woo. And in the 10 years it took us to write our book, everything is documented, footnoted, and sourced. It is science. Science is catching up with women's intuition. It's time to bring women back into the conversation, and guys, zip up your pants.
You know what? Let me go ahead and add this, man. I mean, I don't know how many men are out there who are listening, but dude, it's an excellent ride if you just go with it.
It's an excellent ride. Thank you so much. It's a great ride. Let's enjoy the ride, for heaven's sakes. This is our one shot at it. Let's have a good time and respect and love each other. We are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and respect is definitely part of love, and definitely that is what I wish for all of you, whether you agree with this stuff or not. I really do wish that you experience love, and I really do wish that you experience understanding, whether you are a man or a woman or something else at this point. The Ochelli Effect is done. Thank you for listening to UCY.TV. Everybody, have a good night. Rivet! Hi.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
But I have the files. I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, pistols and frontal slap of choice, computers, internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter whether it's cartoon comes from, as long as it's real. It's hard to get real information, because seriously, they don't want you to have just read two sources.